Okay, hi. In this video, I am going to talk through some graphs and just kind of explain how I would discuss level, trend, and variability within each of those graphs. So hopefully this will be helpful as you're writing your results section or putting together presentations. Okay, so if we look at this first graph, we can see that we are looking at the number of correct responses that the student had. Across the x-axis is the sessions that were conducted. If we look at baseline, the first baseline, we can see that there was a low level of correct responding for this student, close to zero rate of responding. And data were relatively stable. There was a little bit of variability, but for the most part, pretty stable. After 4 data points, intervention was implemented, and we saw with the implementation of the intervention an immediate change in level, as well as an increasing trend in correct responding, indicating that the student was benefiting from the intervention. After 6 intervention sessions, the intervention was briefly withdrawn in order to determine if, or to demonstrate experimental control. And so once the intervention was withdrawn, we saw an immediate decreasing trend in correct responding for this student. After 4 data points, we reintroduced the intervention, and as we can see, the student is steadily increasing their correct responding. We're seeing an increasing trend again that's actually steeper than the first intervention phase. What's going on? There we go. Okay. This is a second graph that I can show you, and we'll talk through these. In this example, we're working with the student Jack, and we are looking at the percentage of intervals with inappropriate vocalizations having occurred. So these were data that were taken using partial interval recording, and we're evaluating the percentage of the intervals in which the student was inappropriate in vocalizing. This is actually a student I used to work with, and he was like 4, and he would shout curses and just be very inappropriate. But he was this little tiny, cute little kid. And anyway, funny kid. Anyway, so percentage of intervals with inappropriate vocalizations. So prior to the start of intervention, we saw variable and high levels of inappropriate vocalizations occurring, with a minimum of about 48% of intervals having inappropriate vocalizations to as high as close to 80% of the intervals. When we implemented the intervention, which was self-monitoring for the student, we saw an immediate change in level. We had 0 or close to 0 rates of the problem behavior, the inappropriate vocalizations. After a trend was established and a change from baseline to intervention was noted, the intervention was briefly removed. It was withdrawn, and we returned to similar baseline levels of baseline, an immediate increase in level of problem behavior, and again, variable performance from the student as well. Finally, the self-monitoring was re-implemented, and in addition, we looked at independent initiations for him, asking for something appropriately. And as we see, there's an immediate change in level back to about the same as the initial intervention phase. We do have a low level of variability occurring, and a flat trend here, which is what we would want to see given that we're looking to decrease these problem behaviors. Another example, this is an example of a multiple baseline. I only have 2 of the 3 settings on here. But as you can see, in baseline, we had low levels of appropriate behavior occurring. As soon as the intervention was put in place, we saw a change, immediate change in level with an increasing trend in positive behaviors that then leveled off, most likely due to a ceiling effect. The intervention was removed when the student reached independence, and follow-up data demonstrated that the skills maintained after intervention was removed. For the second behavior, we again saw some variability in baseline, but low levels of appropriate behavior. Once intervention was implemented, we began to see an increasing trend until that behavior reached independence. Follow-up showed that the skills maintained after active intervention was removed.